So my name's Dave Ratner. I'm the president of Enterprise Solutions at Syniverse. So Syniverse got its name doing roaming and interconnection for all the wireless operators around the world. So when you take a trip and you land in a foreign country and you turn on your phone and your phone works, that's Syniverse working behind the scenes. You get a welcome SMS message and text messages get routed properly, that's Syniverse behind the scenes. You turn on data and data streams, that's Syniverse behind the scenes. But increasingly, on the enterprise side, we've realized that in this mobile-first world, there's a need to help brands and enterprises better connect, engage, interact, and protect their mobile-first users. And so Syniverse has expanded into the enterprise segment, doing that for enterprises and brands around the world. We do that by both having connections with literally hundreds of operators around the world. We're in 200 different countries with connections into all the mobile operators. We touch almost every mobile user on the planet. But we also have connections into a variety of enterprises and brands around the world as well. We talked a lot about some of the challenges around doing business in China, and certainly Syniverse has a couple hundred people here in Beijing. And we do business with a lot of Chinese companies and enterprises and brands, as well as China Mobile, China Unicom, China Telecom here in China. You know, one of the biggest challenges that people talked about was trying to do things in perhaps an American or European way and coming into China and doing that. You know, look, I've had multiple different companies in China before. It just doesn't work. And one of the things that people talked about is you have to have China leadership. You have to have China almost not as a self-contained unit, but as a collection where products get built and supported here locally in China to be able to be responsive to the Chinese market, be able to understand the Chinese needs. I think a lot of times people in the United States or people in Europe or elsewhere in big mobile national corporations don't understand the intricacies of the Chinese market and what Chinese customers actually want. It's interesting, there's a lot of very powerful companies that are rising up and rising up from China. You know, Tencent with WeChat is a perfect example of a messaging company which has taken the world by storm and rose up from China and gets significant usage by all kinds of people, regardless of where they are in the world. They don't have to be in China to use it. And it's increasingly moving into a variety of other aspects more than just messaging and payments and advertising and social and travel and all different kinds of aspects. And so the opportunity here in China is not just the Chinese market and the people here in China and how big that market is and the opportunities that there are, but also some of the very interesting technology and some of the very interesting companies that come out of China from that. If you look, for example, at Japan, as an example, like there are certain aspects of Japan which are very similar to the United States or Europe, but the use of emojis and other kinds of aspects in Japan means that there are certain businesses and certain business models and certain characteristics of applications that work well in Japan which don't translate into elsewhere in Europe or elsewhere in the United States. I think China is going to be very similar from that perspective. I think that products will get built here in China which will have applicability elsewhere in the world. And there will be the ability to make use of products and technologies that cross China border and apply generally everywhere. But there will always be aspects of China-specific items and China-specific implementations, and whether it's emojis or other kinds of aspects, there will always be things that are China-specific that need to be done by people who clearly and intimately understand the Chinese market. Syniverse, as I mentioned, we do a lot of business internationally, both in China and around the world, on just connecting users. But there's a variety of different value-added services that can ride on top of that connection rail, if you will, that Syniverse is very interested in today's mobile-first world. Things like identity and identity management. As mobile payments, as Apple Pay and Android Pay roll out around the world, and Apple Pay is now rolling out in China here as well, it introduces a whole bunch of both opportunities around integration of wallet and wallet advertising, as well as fraud. What we're seeing around the world and elsewhere now is one of the biggest cases of fraud is taking a perfectly valid credit card and loading it onto somebody else's phone. And so through identity and identity services, we can match up, is the credit card owner the same as the phone owner, and make sure that we can protect the user in that way. So there's aspects of identity and identity management. There's aspects of engagement and how do I actually, instead of just marketing to you, how do I drive a real two-way conversation and true engagement with you in order to build better brand loyalty, in order to monetize you in an increasingly better fashion. And finally, there's aspects of how do I understand who you are better, who you are, where you are, what your likes and dislikes are, so that I can use that to better get down to a targeted, personalized market of one rather than mass market everywhere. And I think Syniverse is doing all these different kinds of aspects around connecting, engaging, identifying, and protecting mobile-first users, both here in China and around the world.